So welcome to Chaos Corner. We're going to recap everything that's happened in the adventure so far, and then we'll probably get off on a couple of tangents for GMing advice or character building advice or anything that happens within the worlds of either your player characters or your villains or whatever. So we're going to try and do this frequently. I'm not 100% sure. I'm joined here with Tyler, who's our DM.
I would say frequently.
Frequently?
Yeah.
And there's going to be changes coming up to the podcast anyway, which you guys may or may not care of, But so this is Brian, who plays Cornyn, and Tyler's here, who's our GM. We're going to kind of just go through the whole backstory of the campaign, some of which we never really touched on. Kind of dove into the middle of it, even though we tried to record it. Our audio setup was not correct, right?
Yep.
And we ended up having bad audio, or it sounded like it was underwater, or we lost it for the footage, or not the footage, but the audio recording, or something was corrupt, and it sucked because we had Stan, who plays Rojan in our campaign. He had a big moment. Very emotional and large moment in the campaign, to where almost everybody at the physical table, was in tears.
Yes.
It was a very, very good moment. And that's one of my big regrets of this podcast, is we weren't able to capture that. Even though we tried, the audio footage, or the audio recording, was corrupt.
Yeah.
And so what was able to be salvaged of it was about 2 minutes, 3 minutes?
About 2 minutes, and it was actually kind of just right at the very end.
Right at the very end, yeah. I was like, what in the world? So we've since switched our audio recording to try and take some of these technical difficulties out, but it makes me really sad, because he had a very big moment for that. It was very moving, very memorable, where before... Because he got the name Rojan, he used to be called Warbreaker, right? Warbrick, excuse me.
Yep.
And he had a brother. And that was the whole thing, is that Dylan, who plays Talk, was his brother, and I forget his character name.
It was Warbrick and Warbrock.
I don't 100% remember.
It was something weird. They kind of had a name, like similar names.
Right, and they're from the same clutch. There was a lot of that Dragonborn family mentality kind of thing going on, and pride and honor, and want to do it for the clutch, and they were trying to find their other clutch mates, and then tragically Dylan's character ended, right?
Yep.
He ended up going down, failing all of his death saves, which left Stan's character, Warbrick, just devastated.
Yeah.
And it was like I said, it was really a touching moment, where we ended up, I think it was in not a tavern, but an inn. We just burned down the inn as like a funeral pyre.
Yeah.
And that town was never the same again.
No, actually, well, the town was going to start an uprising, because it was one of the major inns at the beginning of the story arc.
It was.
And they burnt it down, and then Xander, who was played by Rob, ended up almost coercing, magically, telepathically, coercing everybody that was there that it didn't actually happen.
And it's okay.
And that everything was okay.
Like
that the building just never existed, and then everything was done. So what happened was the arc that happened there was Warbrick was, which is Stan's character. They were in a dreamscape, within a dreamscape, and Warbrick saw himself and but it was an evil version of himself that he was trying to kill, which actually ended up being the other ones, Dylan's characters, actual person, and they fought, and then Stan killed Dylan's character, and it was very sad and very, killed him in the real life setting, which is why he failed his death saving throws and everything. It was very a very touching, very sad, very deep lore-esque kind of part of the session, which
that was session 3, wasn't it?
that was like 3 or 4.
3 or 4, because the ones before that, it was us kind of finding each other. We all had a letter, right?
Yep.
We met at a town. We're kind of at the crossroads, and this rickety old man and his wife.
Yes.
Well, except for, I think, one of us or 2 of us at the time.
Yep. So,
causing chaos everywhere we went.
yeah.
But that was the main, like, starting focal point. I'm so sad that we weren't able to actually capture it, because it was such a beautiful moment for everybody involved. Like, even the other characters felt for him, because it was so real that as it came down, he comes out of this dream state. He finds that his family honor, his sword that he's been battling with these demons in, has cut down his brother, his clutchmate, that they have been adventuring together to find their other clutchmates.
Yeah.
And has his blood on his hands as the sword absorbs his brother's blood.
Yes.
And it was kind of the start of some of the chaotic magic that Cornyn had. And Cornyn and at that time, Warbrick had a very touching moment where Warbrick was at his most vulnerable, and he was very raw at that point, and he was able to come over and comfort him, kind of teleport-esque to him through the emotional connection that they were gaining for that. And it was at that point that the name change happened, where he was reborn, quote-unquote, as Rojan, and served or set his fealty to Cornyn.
Yeah.
Because while he doesn't trust himself enough to make those decisions anymore, because he didn't know what was real and what was fake.
Yeah.
Right? And so he would have Cornyn as the touchstone of what needs to happen, and kind of became battling with his inner demons as he's following this short little fuckhead, right? Going through there. But it was a very, very touching moment, and we all kind of came out, and it ended up happening, and the other characters weren't 100% sure what was going on. There was some talk for that, but like, this needs to happen, and it needs to, not cause an uprising, because not having the pyre would be worse than having the pyre.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to scar this town, and it's not going to be great for the town, but they don't need to know that.
No.
There were some shenanigans in that town as well after, and the wounds were still fresh. We came in very, very soon after that. I think it was episode 5 or 6 that we actually got our recording stuff somewhat figured out, where we could actually, present you guys an episode, and it was kind of cool to do that. Yeah. It's all kind of new to us, and the editing stuff I kind of take care of, and we just want everybody to have fun, right? And having those along the way, there was in that same episode, there was a role for how big Cornyn's dick was, basically, at that point, and that's that's where we get our giantess, basically.
Yeah.
Or not giantess, but it's what is that race?
Goliath.
Goliath waitress that Cornyn has slept with. And and so on and so forth, and it was interesting, to say the least, and some kind of rolled off of that. But then there's some politics in there as well, trying to get this all set up. We met with the mayor. The mayor kind of disappeared. We didn't get to save him in that dreamscape unnecessarily, and like I said, there was some politics for that, and building permits that were not up to code at some points, and some trickery and some thievery and some fucking around with local businesses for the tavern or cookeries or whatever to go to the temple after we went to the temple and purge the temple to get building permits and get that all going and everything else. And I know I'm oversimplifying here, but
what building permits?
Yeah, what building permit? Don't worry about it. I know I'm kind of oversimplifying here, but there's a lot of like combat and stuff in there, and some long debates in between there for politicking crap and whatever. Not saying that that's a bad thing, but I don't need to bring it up here. You can go listen to the episode if you want to, because it's in the episodes. And some meddling with mines for the blacksmith, which is the father of Gertrude. Is it Gertrude?
Gertrude. Yes.
The
Goliath
waitress. Her daddy is now mind controlled to Rojan and Xander.
Mainly Xander. Yeah.
Yeah, mainly Xander. And getting that all started and talking with Larson. Thank you. I made that joke and I don't remember his actual name anymore. Doing that and some drudgery through that and getting everything for the contracts and all that stuff set up. And like I said, I know I'm oversimplifying a lot of this, and we're on the road to Waterdeep to go avenge the party or the battalion or whatever it was in particular for Sarzian, which is Mark, who's our resident paladin for that, and we still haven't gotten to Waterdeep after encountering cloakers, and we kind of ended that on day three by finding a little girl, or not us, but Talk, played by Dylan, finding a little girl in the middle of the night, which is already creepy, by the river, and kind of cut to black at that point. That was kind of the last episode for that, and it's interesting. We'll find out, but it's interesting.
Yeah. So that last episode that you guys probably have just listened to, what happened was the creature that they ended up fighting that was presented to them as a little girl was actually an Eldrazi Lich. It was kind of a custom created creature that I decided would be just something to kind of put some of the characters into check and almost kind of like limit their connection to Cornyn, because Cornyn being the demigod.
I kind of glossed over that. The day two, after the Cloakers, we met up with Haragon and her party.
Yep.
Saw Bahamut, right?
Yep.
Did that, and the temple and everything was kind of building upon this connection that Cornyn happens to have with the chaotic side of the magic that connects him to the gods, right? Question mark? Like, I'm not even 100% sure. And a lot of the time, just full transparency, a lot of the time, I don't know what the hell Tyler's planning or what he needs from me. And so it'll kind of go off on a random direction, hence the Chaos Crew, right? Having the chaotic wild surge or wild magic surge happen, right? And I don't remember... No, I don't think that was one that was recorded. Is that one of them that he had gotten originally? I think it was with the mayor. That he vomited bubbles or not bubbles, but smoke.
Yes.
For like 2 hours straight.
That was the session that you guys met Targaryen for the very first time.
Yep.
And found out that he was a crackhead. And
in a very literal sense.
So Targaryen being a character that I played in a campaign many years ago. He is a Oathbreaker Paladin that was made to break his oath because he became addicted to the drugs in the Forgotten Realm universe. And there's thousands of different drugs, but like the major ones, like in our world, like black tar heroin and LSD and cocaine and magic mushrooms, things like that. He was addicted to all of it, and he had a hourglass tattoo because his deity was the like a spider queen, almost like demonic deity. So he made a pact with her. So he had an hourglass tattoo, like a Black Widow hourglass, that if it started to fade from the red, that he was going to die unless he absorbed more drugs. So the first time that the party met him, it was because he was searching for something for the mayor in this little like hut area where it was a dwarven hut, like little village-esque kind of thing, but there was like 3 dwarven huts, and that were raided by goblins.
Mm-hmm.
And the party had fought them and everything, but the Dragonborn Targaryen ended up coming in after the battle was done and was looking specifically for something. And
something to appease his addiction, essentially, where it's like, oh, hi, I'm glad you guys are doing good. Got any drugs? Like,
yeah,
pretty straightforward about it.
So yeah, he was never afraid to openly admit things, but it just kind of was one of those things. And so like when everything that happened between Rojan and his brother, like before his brother passed or was murdered, in essence, Targaryen didn't know anything that happened. So then the next time the party met Targaryen, and Targaryen called him by his previous name,
Mm-hmm.
there was very
there was already
major
tension. I was going to say there was already major tension there because you're talking about Targaryen, who's a dragonborn of high level, is a padlock, etc. Is of such a different world of Warbrick and his brother.
Yep.
That there was already tension.
Yeah.
And then it heightened to the point where you could almost cut it in the air with a knife, essentially. So when we seen Targaryen the next time after Cornyn summoned him through trying to strengthen bonds with Avalon and Sarzian, Mark and Sally. Sally and Mark. And it was he called him by Warbrick, which really set some stuff off in Rojan at that point, and it was very.
It got very dark, very quick, and
yeah.
got very emotional. Definitely saw a different side. Definitely saw a different side of Targaryen and a different side of Rojan. Rojan opened up to Targaryen a little bit, but not enough to like be buddy.
Yeah.
Where Targaryen was like, oh, like this really sucks. Because Targaryen is of noble dragonborn birth.
Right.
So he, like, the fact of losing family, he gets it, but, like, the fact of losing family to your own, to yourself, that is a different story. And Targaryen has never experienced that, even though he does have several brothers and sisters.
Mm-hmm.
He just doesn't, he's never experienced that, where he felt major empathy for Rojan because of what happened.
Right.
But they kind of joked a little bit and everything, but there was still a lot of tension between the two.
Right.
But it's...
Well, and from a mechanical perspective, we're what, level 7, 8, somewhere in there?
Yeah, I think 7.
At the time, and, mechanically speaking, Targaryen is level 17, 18, something like that.
Yeah.
Pretty high level. So where, the rolls really aren't fair and it's mostly in his favor, but he's so out of his mind he doesn't actually know.
Yeah.
Right? And so some of the stuff that we found out about our characters, right? Like Sarzian, Sarzian. Mark's character, he was from the Swords Coast. He was in a regiment of some kind with a battalion or a whatever the correct term is for
he was
a squad of soldiers or whatever.
He was a battalion captain that was overran by a herd of
band of orcs.
Band of orcs.
And their associated kin, right?
Yep. And but they were actually being led by a demonic creature. And a very close friend of Sarzian's was slayed by that specific creature, and that's where Sarzian, or Mark, has vowed that he will claim vengeance for his squad mates for what happened. So
And that's currently kind of where we're going, is to go to Waterdeep to get to the Sword Coast to do that. And along the way, we've kind of picked up some history of the other characters, right? We don't really see a whole lot of Natsu.
Nope.
Kind of an intermittent player, and we love you, Allie. We really do. But there's not a lot of history there. She's a cat folk, right?
Yep.
And she's a barbarian, and that's about as deep as it goes, which is totally fine. But like Avalon, we know that she used to worship Umberlee, right?
Yep, Umberlee.
And she was kind of raised in the temple to do that, so she was very used to doing book smart thing, or a lot of book and prayer work and stuff like that to Umberlee. And we've seen the struggle of faith with that, with Umberlee not giving up on her, but testing her for her faith, and essentially, in air quotes here, switching to Cornyn, right?
Yeah.
About what to do, because Umberlee also wants that spot that Cornyn is trying to fill, that Cornyn doesn't know, right?
Well, Umberlee's trying to, or Umberlee's part of the.
Well, he knows
the
now.
pact, is part of the pact of trying to get Vecna to fill that deity spot.
Yes.
So
dealing with Strahd, right, has been a big thing for Cornyn and the party in general, right? You've seen that go down where Strahd will like put imprints of his fingers in the fucking shoulder of Cornyn. Thanks. And that also echoes through the party, and it's interesting because it's an emotional connection, and it's as a player of Cornyn, it's interesting to see what is kind of expected of me, or how to go around that. Of, like I said, what Tyler wants, I don't fucking know. It's one of those things where it's an unknown to me, even until we get there. And obviously, Tyler and I have talked before the campaign even started of a couple of different things. But it's been interesting to see like the strengthening connections, and channeling power through those connections is how we summon Targaryen, right?
Yeah.
And it's so it's interesting to see that dynamic. Like I said, Avalon, we've seen some of the stuff she's done, and some of the oddities of her character come forth because of the history, and we've been able to kind of get into that some. And Talk is a little bit of an unknown on a lot of levels for the history of that. We know that he worked for Todd the blacksmith, and he was in Stradenheim, and he worked there, but he's fairly young.
Yes.
So there isn't a whole lot of history there, but he is making history with the party.
He's fairly young in the aspect of he was found and rebooted to be used, but the thing with Talk is he's been around for God knows how long. It's just he's only been in Stradenheim for a total of maybe 5 or 6 years. That's when he was brought back online, where Todd didn't really know what he was doing when he was messing around with this metal man, and just happened to spark an arcane
starter,
basically,
starter
that restarted Talk, but Talk didn't know who he is, or what he is, or where he was, or anything, just that he knew how to kind of almost
like embellish arms and armor, right?
Yeah, it almost imbue magic into...
That's the correct word, there you go.
Imbue magic into day-to-day items. Like the hammer in Todd's blacksmith shop, it's imbued with magic to where it can never break down. So it's one of those things where, I mean, if we do a rundown, I mean, we've got Tak, that's the artificer. We've got Rojan, who's our champion fighter. We've got Cornyn, who is the
little shit
sorcerer that's transitioning almost into a demigod-esque right now role.
And to be clear, has zero idea what he's doing.
Yes.
Like he doesn't understand the divine side of it all at all.
Yep.
He's had these powers since he was a little kid, which was only 2 feet ago, And he's a halfling. That's why it's funny. Anyway, so he's had these powers, and it's all of the arcane side. So he doesn't know how to worship. He doesn't know what the rituals are. He doesn't know how to pray, and any of that. He hasn't been able to explore that side of it yet, which is why he's seeking guidance from Avalon and Sarzian, because they are of the divine nature of the magic side.
Yeah.
Right? And so he's just a little chaos gremlin, essentially.
Yeah, basically. And that's where what happened in the pantheon of this realm. So the way I kind of built this world is I took the module for Ravenloft, or Curse of Strahd. I took that module and I turned it into a homebrew-esque, added Vecna in as the major big bad. We've got Strahd, who is the champion of Vecna, who is basically coercing and just pissing off the party as much as he can, just at any little moment he can get, by either telepathically or physically showing up and
while dreaming or anything, like making a dreamscape and screwing with their heads and just trying to break the party apart, essentially.
Yeah.
And piss them off in doing so, you know. It's been interesting to see, like I said, some of those backstories come out where everybody's got their own kind of angle coming from it, and that's why their character is the way there is. One of the things that I've purposely done is we haven't really explored Cornyn's backstory at all, which Tyler and I worked out ages ago, even before we started this campaign.
Yes.
And it's been interesting to kind of do, and there's been stuff that he shied away from, but hasn't been directly confronted with it to do that. Other than that one time with Warbrek, to Rojan, you know, some of that came out a little bit, and that's when their bond was formed.
Yes.
The other thing with Cornyn is he's kind of like right now in the campaign, upon leveling up, essentially he's basically a time sorcerer.
Yeah, he's a
more or
time,
less.
between a time and a almost wild magic sorcerer.
Right.
So Cornyn was kind of almost originally was going to be a wild magic sorcerer, but when we were looking at the backstory and everything, and with what we wanted to do between Brian and I for the character's direction, we kind of thought what would work the best, and it was taking basically the two classes and smushing them together, and we got this baby that was Cornyn. And oh my god, it's been ever so terrifying because you don't know what's going to happen.
Exactly. And now with the time element becoming more and more prominent with the class, it's going to get very interesting very quickly.
Yeah.
And part of that is because of his backstory. That's why he's running.
Yes.
Right. That is why he's running, and that's why he's kind of terrified. Like he doesn't fear Strahd, he doesn't fear Vecna, only because he's already known some of the horrors of the world or whatever. And so he's just not looking back. It's like anything is better than what I was just in. So he's very positive normally, and playful, and whatever you want to call it, annoying, whatever.
Almost like a mix between a surfer boy and a hippie.
Right. He's down for it. Like let's do it. It's fine.
But when I was building the world out for this campaign, like I said, I took that module. I took and added it into the Forgotten Realm. I added in personal cities that, like Stradenheim. Stradenheim's just a stepping stone in the whole Ravenloft and
Curse of Vecna lore.
The Curse of Strahd lore.
Or Curse of Strahd, excuse me.
And the whole Forgotten Realm aspect and everything, I wanted to kind of put my own twist on it. The other thing was I was trying to figure out how can I add Vecna into it to be the ultimate big bad guy, and I kind of took it from Matt Mercer in Critical Role with taking and using Vecna as a lich who is trying to ascend to godhood. And how is he doing that? Well, he used not just his champion Strahd, but other tools to his advantage to coerce a god of chaos and wild magic to Earth, or to the Forgotten Realm, and slayed him. So there's that gap in
the Pantheon,
yeah, where you have the Betrayer gods and the Primal gods trying to compete for
the spot of
that
deity, yeah,
by almost finding someone who can fill that spot. Where the Betrayer gods have Vecna and the Primal gods have chosen Cornyn because his wild magic is so pure because he was born with it. His wild magic and time magic was pure because he was born with it. He didn't develop it. It was something from birth. And that's kind of where like everything with the backstory on Cornyn, which if and when we can ever get to that, it would really open up the story and explain a lot. But it's the same as trying to get to the backstory of Sarzian or Avalon. I mean, in Avalon we've kind of and we've kind of
getting into that. You know, we see gleams of it, but we're not actually diving into it.
Yeah.
Which some of the things, and I think I discussed this with you before, but coming into the time magic, we could have a party flashback essentially as one of the wild magic surges that comes through, and we're ethereal essentially. We're living through this moment of said character where we're at the battle that Sarzian was at. We're in the temple with Avalon. We're wherever the hell talk was before he got rebooted, you know, or in the eyes of Xander, you know, right before he met the party and such. It would be interesting, you know, especially or if we go into Rojan, it would be then in Warbrek and his brother and starting that adventuring and you know, getting into their way of living and stuff. It'd be very interesting. But you know, like I said, if and when we get to that point, we can cross that bridge when we get to it. But there is a lot of that tumbling around, right?
Yes.
Where, excuse me, the party is kind of exploring each other as much as the settings around them.
Yes.
Right?
Well, and how the party came to be, and we've always joked that it's the Chaos Crew because it's like there's no structure to the party.
There's no structure to the party, as well as now with the connections, you know, if somebody casts like a high level magic spell, that they also have to roll on the magic or
the
wild magic table,
scale,
you know, which is Tyler's got a big custom list that it comes from. It's not just the normal one in the 5e
I've got almost 10,000 wild magic
excuse me,
wild magic things that can happen.
One of them was I got frozen.
Yeah,
I was basically a statue for hours, like hours upon hours.
They just had to pick him up and move him.
Exactly. Like I couldn't do anything. I could still breathe. I couldn't eat. I couldn't do anything. I was a statue. Luckily, it was a very small one,
yes.
So it was easy to, you know. Where if I had Goliath or something like that, well, he's stuck. I guess we're gonna go to the pub, kind of thing. But no, it's been interesting to do that, and some of it turns out to be really hilarious.
Yes.
For that, you know.
And it's I had to kind of scale it. Like we did it initially. Anytime you casted anything at level 1 or higher, and it was just way too much because anytime they did anything, they were rolling on the wild magic scale, and it's like, okay, like this is too much. So then I was like, okay, let's scale it to if it's 3rd level or higher. And now that they're kind of at that level 8 or 9 range right now, I forget what level we're at right now, but with where we're at in level, like, I'm trying to scale it up so that way it's not
so frequent. Yeah.
So frequent. Like, it's enough to where it hits every once in a while, but not constant. Because the constant wild magic thing, there's so many crazy things on the wild magic scale and on the one that I built that there's things that it basically immobilizes the whole party and you can't do anything. And what's the fun in that? But then there's things where, like, you're passing, you're walking, and you have fog, like a cloud of fog bellowing out of you, like you're a chain smoker, and
right.
you're just lighting one cigarette after the other.
It just becomes an area of effect, after a while.
Yeah.
And it's just been random. And I did just check. We're level 10 now.
Okay, yeah.
But it's been interesting, and some of the spells that I've taken, and one thing that I've talked to Tyler quite a lot about is that I don't want to be overpowered, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to take away from everybody else's fun because it's a team building.
Yeah.
It's a team game. It's a collective storytelling game.
Exactly.
Cornyn does not by any means have to be the focus on here. Just we happen to be at a section in the story where we're kind of right at the end of it, where Cornyn, we've done the stuff in Stratenheim. We've started to rebuild the temple. There was the Bahamut stuff and yada yada yada. Where now we're kind of coming on the downhill trend where we can go and explore somebody else's backstory or get into that, where it's taken forever to get there.
And
I mean, we're on
wild,
episode 9, I think, or 8. Of just trying to go from Stratenheim to Waterdeep, and it's like, come on.
Yeah, like it's.
But some of that too comes on to like the random encounter tables, right?
Yep.
It's like we can't just go unchallenged from Stratenheim to Waterdeep and not expect to have any repercussions.
Yeah, and where the party's at right now, they're about a day and a half still to travel to Waterdeep, which isn't horrible. It's just what could happen in that day and a half.
Right.
Like the whole thing with the little girl that ended up everybody. So there's a running joke that I have a 2-year or 3-year-old now that she's like they're all afraid that she's going to become the ultimate big bad truly in the game. So I have made a character that is a creature that is my daughter.
Mechanically,
that they thought was her. It actually turned out that it was an Eldrazi Lich that takes the form of what they see, and they fought that, which really hindered the party because, well, they haven't ever fought something that has the capability of controlling your mind that has a DC saving throw that was that high.
Right.
Like, unless...
It's something that you don't prepare for. It's like, I got my sword, my shield, I gotta protect my brain. Like, it's not something that goes through a normal adventurer's head. Like, I don't think anybody's really, unless they've encountered that before, as an adventurer, they're going to be like, okay, I need to do something for that specifically for either psychic damage or mind control or anything like that. There are a couple of races that have that where like they can't be charmed or stuff like that. But generally speaking, like nobody's like, I'm gonna make sure I don't get brain control today or mind control today.
Yeah.
And it's something that doesn't come up, right?
And so the crazy thing was, even Cornyn, who has a fairly high wisdom,
I do, yeah.
He had to roll all above a 18 to just beat the DC saving throw. Like it really was one of those things where the party was. I wanted something to test the party, and this really tested the party because it wasn't so much the creature fighting them. It was
themselves right.
fighting them.
Well, and then as a character, you come in there and go like, well, I need to shut this down because they're going to kill everybody or they're going to kill themselves or whatever. So how do I do that? And as a sorcerer, it's not like I can take a billy club and go, well, bam, and then they knock out, right?
Yeah.
I can't do that. I'm not a physical fighter. In fact, my physical stats are horrible. But like, what do you do, right? You gotta drop them somehow.
Yeah.
And then you come into that moral dilemma of I have to attack my friends.
Yes.
And it's very interesting that way, and a very different dynamic where you don't think that you have to do that, but you end up having to do that, and it causes some almost some PTSD like symptoms in a character. Like I had to fight my best friend.
Yep.
Right, and it's not like I could hold back. It's not like we're play fighting. Like this is serious, and they will kill me if I don't take this seriously.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. Who's the king of the hill of the party, so to speak. Where it's like, ugh, okay, well.
Yeah, and like having it where Rojan was under the mind control basically until the creature was
destroyed.
That Xander, I don't even remember what he was doing. I think he was
he was knocked out in the cart.
Passed out in the cart.
Bad food poisoning.
Yeah, Avalon was mind controlled. Sarzian had immunity to it because of his ancestry, but
even so, like he had to witness all that as well.
Yeah, and
it's something so drastically different from what you're used to doing in D&D or Pathfinder or similar systems, where you go in, you find a horde of goblins or hobgoblins or bandits or whatever, and you take that and you throw it all out the window because now you're fighting your own party.
Yeah,
it's very interesting. Where if Cornyn didn't make the save, it was just Sarzian, it'd have been a different ball game altogether. Where Rojan could have taken out one of us or multiples of us, or same way with Avalon.
And the way the creature said it, like the way it controlled it is it just told them to fight among each other. It didn't want them to be on one side. Mm-hmm. It wanted them to
specifically
fight each other.
Yeah, so specifically fight each other. To the point where it's just like it's me or them.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like
it's not a one-on-one or one side versus whatever. It's one for all.
Yeah.
One champion off of this whole thing. Yeah, would destroy the whole party.
Yeah.
And it was very, interesting to say the least, and very tense fight until we could get some people back into their own heads, to do that. Be like, well, I would do this, but my character has to do this other thing, where I don't have the control to do that. I can't pull my punches. It's going all out.
Yep.
Which really opens that up and go, oh, that's what my character can do. It's very interesting that way mechanically to say like, oh, I could do all of that damage. That's insane.
Yes.
I choose not to because I do other things with my spell slots and thinking about that. But if it's a me versus somebody else or me versus them scenario, and you go all out, you're like, it's gonna be one big hurrah. And that's gonna be it. And I didn't. There was one point I believe that Cornyn was mind controlled.
Yes.
And he went all out. It was like
shortly right after.
Luckily, I was gonna say luckily
failed your second. I think your second saving throw.
Saving throw. Yep.
And you were told to
fight,
to kill your friends.
Yep. And it was like I summoned every single thing, spent every sorcery point I could, which in mechanically speaking screws you for the next fight or during this fight.
Yeah.
So then you're pretty much wasted of spell slots and everything useful as a sorcerer, as a wizard.
Yep.
Or magic user of any kind, really, for the next bout. So like if we got through this and then, some other thing came through that we had to look at, it'd be like, I'm useless now.
Yeah.
It's whatever I've got that's magical, like my staff or my wand or whatever.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm spent, right?
Yeah.
I can't really do any physical damage, so it's going to be, how can I, so the tactic changes, right?
Yes. So, and my biggest thing was, I was like, how can I get the party to almost become closer by tearing them apart.
Trying to destroy themselves, yeah.
So when I did this whole thing, I was like, I want to do it to where, yes, this is going to make the party stronger by breaking down every single wall that's up.
And so it's really interesting to get into that dynamic, because normally as a character, like as a player character, you don't get that opportunity very often.
No.
Right, to where you're fighting your own party. I've seen it
and there's some
in other campaigns where it'll be like, it's a shadow clone and yada yada yada. And we're like, kind of, it's almost a trope at this point where it's like the fighter fights the fighter, and then the ranger fights the ranger, and the wizard fights the wizard, and they have to switch in order to defeat one another, right?
And this was
that was not that. No, this was kill or be killed, basically, at that point, and it was really interesting to see just that dynamic of, because I've never been part of something like that. It was very interesting. As far as the world and getting the world building, obviously, like you said, you've borrowed some stuff from Stroudenheim, Ravenloft, and stuff like that. Yeah. Where, as GMs or GMs, we borrow stuff from all over, right?
Yeah.
Nobody already, normally doesn't have 100% original idea of whatever. No. It's always borrowed from somewhere, and we're all guilty of it. Where it's that anime that you like, or from a book or story that you like. Like Tolkien is a big one, right? You got the elves, dwarves, and orcs, as well as Smaug, the dragon, and everything else.
Yep.
So it's always borrowed.
Yes.
Right? And not to say that it's not fun, it's just a different flavor on it, basically.
Yeah.
And you can take and kind of, I don't want to say crowbar, because that's probably too rough of a word, but you kind of wedge those into your own story building for your world, right?
Yeah.
I know I did that originally for that, but kind of getting off topic for ours, but it's just interesting. There's been a lot of pleasant firsts for me, as I'm normally one that is the game master, and usually we play Pathfinder because it's the system I'm most familiar with. But I'm normally the one always behind the DM screen, making calls, doing the voices, whatever, and it's been kind of nice.
Yeah, and that's one of the things where myself and Brian, like, we bounce so many ideas off of each other for even just this campaign of like, we should try and take it this direction because this person and this person would benefit from it, or the night that fucking Xander and Rojan decided to go hijack the whole fucking session. Literally was one of the reasons why we stayed in Stroudenheim for so long.
Right. Yeah.
They hijacked a whole session because they wanted to go coerce a gnome to stay.
And so for those of you listening to the podcast, the session for us would be 3 episodes for you guys, right? And so it's like 3 more episodes of this shenanigan fuckery that the warlock and fucking warrior have to come up with, or champion rather, that they're doing to just this random, like, fucking, oh my god.
It was an NPC that was supposed to be a one-time encounter,
and they're
that turned into...
They're like, nope.
We love this guy so much.
He needs to come with us.
And every DM out there knows this, that the party's going to railroad and bring back the one thing
that was supposed to be throwaway, that has zero lore, zero backstory, nothing. Yes. And it's the same thing, like for myself, my main campaign that I ran years and years ago, it was Prin. Like, he was an armor maker, and that was it. And the players, like you said, railroaded that back in and just kept coming back to him. It's like, he was supposed to be a throwaway character, supposed to do this thing, done, like, and then just move on with the story. And he came back again and again and again. And of course, it's the hardest voice to do, right? It's like, god damn it.
Yeah. Well, and it's with Rock,
air quotes here,
the biggest thing was was having him give information on why he never wants to set foot on the temple grounds.
Mm-hmm. And so you have to come up with this backstory of, you had mentioned that he had a wife or whatever, and like he's out of the house, but she's in the house, and like he was a mason masonry worker, and one of the better ones, and originally worked on the temple and had to come up with all this lore, kind of on the spot, essentially. And it's just like, that's some of the challenges of a DM, right? Well, you come up like, well, what is his name?
Yeah.
That can also catch you off guard too. It's like, well, what's his name? He's like, yeah, I've never been given one.
Yeah.
And he's like 150 years old. And he's married, so the priest went blank, marries, and it brings up some questions. But I think every DM or GM can relate to that, where you have a character, an NPC, again, a throwaway that the party loves for some reason. And you think, it's just not going to be whatever. And like the NPCs that you think that they're going to love, they just don't care about. And the ones that are, kind of throwaway, they just latch onto. And that's how you get it. It's interesting.
It's much like Larson, too. Like, everybody hates him, but yet it's like one of the characters that he's meant to be there.
Right. He needs to be there. The party should like him. Everybody hates him.
And... I mean, yes.
Well, not everybody, but he's generally despised of the party. It's like, this fucking guy again.
Yeah. Well, and his whole demeanor is kind of like that, like almost like Boston or New Yorker demeanor. So he's kind of like got that little bit of arrogancy, but he's meant to be there because the party will need him at some point.
Right.
But the one they wanted to keep was this little old gnome that just absolutely wanted nothing to do with
anybody. Go away. Yeah, exactly.
But
I'm gonna start a campfire in this dude's front yard, and I'm gonna cook him whatever. It's like 2 a.m. Like,
I'm gonna coerce him out at 2 a.m.
with bacon, like, which is just a hilarious concept. And you want to coerce him out so that the warlock can charm him and go inside and just have all his magic shit for free.
Yeah,
and it's just hilarious. So we say they hijacked a session, but at the same time, like, everybody was having a really good time. Cornyn ended up going over there after Avalon. Got woken up in the middle of the fucking night and yelled at her. Being the party mom essentially, and then Cornyn had to come over and give big dad energy from this little halfling. It's been really good, but even with that, as a DM or GM, I've had that happen where it's not necessarily an NPC. It's the villains.
Yeah.
Right. Where my big bad evil guy for my entire first campaign, party was like almost vaguely aware of them. They're like, yeah, okay, whatever. But the one they saw the most, kind of like in this campaign, was Strahd.
Yep.
They despised.
Yeah.
And it's to the point now, even 10 years later now, I can smile a certain way that he did, and my players, all of my players, including my wife, will go, fuck you. Because they despised him that much. There was so much emotional connection in there that they fucking hated him more than the big bad evil guy.
Yeah.
Right? Even though he's like second in command, right?
Yep.
And just, it's one of those things like, well, I guess it's not really the big bad evil guy after that, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But you get into that other guy, and they're like, he's fucking here, I know it, and they're instantly on edge and instantly like, all right, how the fuck are we going to take this bastard down? It's so hard to predict that, that. And I've got pages and pages and pages of lore for both him and the big bad evil guy, but
it was much like the session where we had after we cleansed, or the party cleansed the temple. And Cornyn went up to the altar and just kind of like sat down, and was sitting like with his back against the altar, like, because he was just exhausted from the combat, that everyone was frozen in place. And Strahd grabs a hold of him and sinks his fingers into his shoulder. Like, everyone, I feel like everyone hates Larson more than they hate Strahd at this point. But
and all that Larson's got going for him is that he's, Boston type of accent, gruff around the edges. He's just trying to do a job, but fucking it's insane. And it's hard to plan for that too, because it depends on how the party's going to react to it, as well.
But there is also a lot of good interaction between him and everything, but it's also one of those things where when he's told to do something by one of the players' characters, he just kind of starts to kind of get mouthy, and then it's like, yeah, nope, never mind, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be over here doing my thing.
Right.
But yeah, and that session, I definitely feel like everyone hated Strahd more than after that session, because of how even not even just that session, we've had other interactions where Strahd's came and just poked and prodded at Cornyn, and Cornyn's told everybody about it,
right? And he, like I said, for what he is experiencing, Strahd is trying to get under his skin, get into his head, do with this, whatever, and it's just not working.
Yeah.
Right? Other than the shoulder thing, because it's physical and it's an attachment and kind of reminds him of it. But, it's almost like he can't hurt Cornyn, because Cornyn, like I said, from his backstory, stuff like that, he's just glad not to be there anymore.
Yeah.
Right? And as far as that goes, it's you can do whatever you want. It's not going to be as bad as what it was.
No.
Right? And Strahd doesn't know that, obviously. You know, and you do that. And you look at, just in villains as a general sense, villains are basically heroes of their own story. They're doing things their way to get what they think is right?
Exactly.
And a lot of people forget that, but you do have history and backstory and everything else of a villain, right? Whether it's a low-level villain of a wizard taking over a tower, and he's doing experiments because ultimately he wants to get his pet dog back or something. He's just trying to do this, and the only way to do that is to do some pretty dark shit. He's going to do it because that would make him the hero of his own story.
Yeah.
Right? And then you have some villains like the big bad evil guys like Vecna that are really on a bigger scale, that have underlings like Strahd. I say underlings, but their champion or generals or whatever of their hierarchy that play into that.
Yes.
Right.
And there's another character that it's another villainous character that eventually the party will be meeting, that kind of wraps into Urzian or Mark's backstory, and she is another character that is a champion or general of Vecna, and actually out of the hierarchy of controls of how I have it wrote, it goes Vecna, then it goes this character, and then it goes Strahd, and then there's other underlings and everything. And
at one point, Strahd was trying to screw with Cornyn's head, getting into there, whatever. And basically, Cornyn was like, "Bring it on! Let's fucking do this! I'll throw the gauntlet down. Let's we're either gonna win or I'm gonna die trying.
Yep.
You cannot scare me, kind of thing. Where it's not like a bold, brash, he's brave, whatever. It ties into who he is at the core,
So, one thing that, and I have no problem telling you guys this and everything, but Strahd technically can't do the telepathic stuff. Strahd's not that kind of creature. He can do short telepathy, but he has to be able to see you. Mm-hmm. This is telepathy on a large scale.
They're 100 miles away.
Yes, dreamscapes, creating dreamscapes, things like that. Strahd can't fully do that. But the other, the
one we haven't,
the one that you guys that no one's met yet, she can.
Right.
And that's where she's doing this for Strahd to mess with the party, because Strahd thinks that I mean, he's a vampire. Vampires are very, well, what's the word I'm looking for? Almost
Arrogant.
arrogant, self-centered, and he thinks that he's above even Vecna. That Vecna should actually be bowing to him, and he should be ascending to that godhood position,
Right.
where that's a vampire's mentality. And the craziest thing about the whole thing is the other character is a character that I played many years ago, and she is a necromancer and a death cleric, and she's a wizard that has control over all of that and death itself. I mean, like, she's very strong that way, but that's why Vecna uses her, because she can control dreams, she can control the dead, she can create things in your mind that you're going to think is 100% real.
Right.
And who knows, maybe the Lich was part of one of her experiments that escaped, and that's why the party ended up fighting themselves.
Right. Right.
Like,
so that way she can kind of feel out what this adventuring party is, and so on, right? Where obviously Vecna would have had some forethought of there's this candidate from the primal gods that is coming, and they're going to be part of this adventuring party, and they're going to start throwing stuff at them that they think, we don't have to worry about it anymore. It's just going to kill it, and it's going to be it. But it's some reason, whether it's fate or whether it's, I wouldn't say skill, but whatever it is, it fits the narrative that they keep surviving and they keep moving forward, and so you just throw stronger and stronger encounters at them or enemies at them, and they're trying to find a weak point to pierce in and just wipe everybody out.
Yeah, like, in the way the whole campaign is wrote is that, so far, is that, Cornyn was chosen to be the primal choice for, or the primal vessel for the god of chaos.
Ascending to the god of chaos.
Yeah, and
of course he doesn't know that. He does now from Bahamut, but he was kind of distracted at that point anyway, so he only kind of half heard.
Yeah,
you know.
But yeah, he's that candidate to become a god, where Vecna has tried to ascend to godhood several times, and this is one of the times in the 100 years where Vecna is trying to rise again. It's just every time that Vecna is defeated, he is sent back to the realm of the dead, basically, where he needs someone to basically be his eyes and ears on the plane of existence, which is the Forgotten Realm and everything. Well, how can he do that? Well, he's got Strahd, he's got other generals and things like that. And boy, the stronger the people he has behind him, the easier it's for him to come back to the plane of existence, to basically start getting a cult to
worship him again,
to help him ascend to godhood. So that's why right now the party is building a temple for Cornyn, is to help get followers. The more followers that Cornyn can get, the
farther up in the hierarchy of quote-unquote godhood than he'll be. And again, he doesn't know that.
No.
Right? He's just like, okay, well, I guess is this what you do when you've been chosen?
Yeah.
You know, kind of thing, where, again, he doesn't know the divine side of it. He knows some of the arcane stuff of it, not to a not to like a spell component level like a wizard would.
Yeah.
But he knows of his abilities and what they can do and so on and so forth. But how does that help bring him to deityhood? He has zero idea, and that's why again he's confiding in Sally and Mark, or Avalon and Sarzian, because they are of the divine side of that magic spectrum.
Yeah.
To see like how the fuck do I do this? You know, like what is actually required of me? What is required of my followers? Why do I need followers? Kind of thing. Like he doesn't know any of that, and so he's kind of, I wouldn't say blindsided by it, but he's just very unknowledgeable in that respect.
Yeah.
You know.
And the other thing too is like now he's starting to learn like that he already has a champion.
Mm-hmm.
Like his champion is Rojan. He has a priest or a priestess that's basically going to help herd followers. He's got eventually he'll have a holy warrior to lead an army for him, or in his name. Like he's got a artificer that's going to be able to enchant things to basically help spread the word of Cornet. Like it's one of those things where the way the party is, and it was not planned out this way at all. It just took this way, like took this turn. But the way it's actually playing out right now, everything that you can think of, like for Greek mythology or anything like that, any of the gods, they have champions, they have high priestess, they have all of that. Cornyn's got all of that in the party.
Right.
Like, so the party itself is like that, like, cog of the wheel for godhood. It's the big part of the wheel that is going to be there to help him ascend to godhood. That's why the town is the temple that was there was the Temple of Ioun. Well, the Temple of Ioun was destroyed by Strahd, and the temple's being rebuilt to be now the Temple of Cornyn. And well, part of the party is also building a black market underground.
Yeah. Illegal trades, part of the religion, like
that does the shady side of stuff for the religion.
Right.
Like the town itself now feels safer because of Cornyn and his disciples almost.
Right.
The party
that are also creating jobs for the townsfolk and everything else too, where they've had this in Stratenheim, they've had that fear of that temple for so long that they're kind of hesitant to do that, but now they're getting work and orders, and everything's kind of prospering, and they're bringing wealth to Stratenheim, which builds up the community as well, which also leads to followers.
Yeah.
And so as far as the Cornyn and disciples thing kind of go, I say that in air quotes and very loosely, is that we've been going through here, is like the meditative state that Cornyn goes into is the only way he knows how to quote unquote pray, right?
Yeah, and it's funny because your meditative state, in air quotes, is almost like the Avatar state.
Right.
The Avatar The Last Airbender.
And it kind of worked out that way, but it's something that Tyler and I have worked out, and I just kind of let him run with, is that it's been, we have these threads or these ropes or these, whatever you want to call them, these connections to Talk, to Avalon, to Sarzian, to Rojan, to Xander, right? That have been getting stronger and stronger, and each one of those does a different thing, right? And it's all different colors, and it's on a whole spectrum, right? And it's all emotion.
Yes.
And it's been interesting, and I brought that up quite a while ago.
Yeah.
To where
you brought it up when we kind of had the idea of doing the whole like godhood thing with the party, and like doing that, and it's funny because one of the things that you brought up was, well, have you ever read anything in the Green Lantern Corps?
Yep.
And
the Green Lantern universe where you have all these different cores and they're all emotion based, right? And it actually works out pretty good, honestly, for our party.
So the big thing we did was we stole the whole emotion wheel and the colors.
Yep.
And so each player is a specific emotion and color.
Yep.
And they're, even before we told them, that's how they're like the players, that's how they play.
Right.
Like,
and so it kind of fit perfectly as far as that is concerned. And then there's been some mystery and some rumors, honestly, even within the party of like, what is that pulsating pink rope or line or whatever you want to call it? That tether, what is that pulsating pink tether? And that's something that Tyler and I both know, obviously. But the party has not yet figured out, and Cornyn has not yet figured out.
No.
Which is why I don't bring it up now. But the strengthening of those bonds where they play is that, like, a good example of that, a really good example of that is Xander. Xander's like a little...
He's a greed gremlin.
Yeah, he's just a greed gremlin where he gets in there. And in the Green Lantern universe, that would be avarice, which would be, it's mine, right? It's all mine. And so he goes out and steals that, and it lines up really well.
And Xander is the character, like Rob, love him to death. He always plays a character where he's got to steal stuff from everybody. So it's like, what would be a good way to make that work, and to play with, and to play toward, or
play into that,
play into each player's strengths.
Right.
So
and it's interesting to see because we've talked about that before a little bit with Cornyn's staff, right? It depends upon which ones are linked. Like, it'd be different if it was all of the positive emotions. There's hope and there's will and there's love and there's whatever. That'd be great.
Yeah.
And it directly affects Cornyn on how he reacts, whether, like, so you take that and you have a strong connection to fear and rage and avarice, and now it's like, oh God, what am I about to do? Because you go from that, and then you also have, for those of you who follow Green Lantern more, you also have the Light Core and the Life Core, which is white, and the Death Core, which is black. So those all kind of play into it too. So you have these mixing of intense emotions that directly affect his character. For outbursts of stuff and whatever, and it's been very interesting to play for that, because it's like, well, I would do this way as Cornyn, but now that I have these intense emotions here, I have to play it differently. And it's been interesting for me as a player to do that.
And the strands that have the strongest connection to Cornyn right now are rage and greed. Like, those are the two that have the strongest connections to Cornyn. Like, hope and will and what was the blue one?
The blue one is hope.
Or the purple one.
Purple, indigo would be. Oh God, I'd have to look it up again, but it's. Actually, look it up right now. I've got it all written down.
We're not sure which colors are what right now. Like, we're all drawing a blank.
Let's see here. So blue is hope, red is rage, yellow is fear, orange is greed, pink is love, and indigo is mercy. Mercy.
So the mercy emotion and the hope and the will emotions, like, those three are like hope's getting there. Like,
and as well as will and mercy, right?
Yeah, and mercy, I feel like too is kind of trying to hit its strides. Will, we're kind of getting a stronger
connection
stride going, because we're starting to hit that backstory and everything.
Right.
And between Mark and Brian, like, as the players, like as the characters, Cornyn and Sarzian, or Sharkbait, or whatever we want to call them at the time, they made a deal that if Cornyn can help rid the suffering that Sarzian is having because of what happened,
Right.
that he will dedicate himself to Cornyn and to Cornyn's
mission, or uprising, or whatever you want to call it at that point. Because again, as we've established, he doesn't know what it is either. You know, so his ascension into godhood essentially is what it boils down to. But trying to play that at the table has been, like I said, very interesting for that. So you have intense emotions for that also kind of governs that, and he has to keep that in check, not only with his party, but the NPCs or the townsfolk or Strahd. Like he can't let Strahd get him into a state where it's just rage and it's just fear, or it's just whatever, because he does not know 100% of that.
Yeah.
Right. And he's still trying to figure this out.
And
so the other ones that are quote unquote good emotions, right, like love and hope and will and stuff like that, and mercy, kind of keep him grounded to counteract that as well, even though they're not as strong, right? So it's been interesting that way.
And even the Black Strand, which is death, which would be Targaryen, that it's only ever pulled on in the dire need of, like, oh crap, we're in over our heads. Mm-hmm. We need something to kind of help us out. And then Cornyn does the Shazam pull and magically pulls out a dragonborn.
He didn't change height at all. He didn't change. He just brought somebody in. But again, at that moment when he's focused, he's about, I'm gonna take all my energy and I'm gonna push it through this black strand and I'm gonna yank it as hard as I can. He at the table, and honestly, I had zero idea what was going to happen.
Yeah,
like that is all on Tyler's side. I'm letting him run with it. Where I think you can hear it in the podcast. It's very clear that I had no idea what the hell's going on. And you're like, are you sure you want to do that? Because like it totally changed, I'm sure, on your side what was going to go on.
Oh yeah.
Like what was going on here, and like he doesn't know, right? And and so it's been fun to play with that, and it's been kind of fun for the other players to try and suss out what the pink strand is, right? And all that. And it's been interesting. Because
when you start to focus on the strands, that's when the party can see them.
Right.
And because it's almost it's funny, it's almost like a band of rainbow colors coming off of Cornyn, but
it's the Scare Bears. Like,
basically. But it's as soon as he pulls one strand, and he can pull any of the players at any time, and it's also works to where if the players are in an area where he's not, much like the session where they were all trying to coerce the little gnome guy out, and the only person who wasn't there was Cornyn. Cornyn was snapped to them.
Right.
Like it works in the way that I've kind of made this. It's how would a god be with its followers? Well, chaos is many emotions.
Right.
It's many colors. It's many things. So how do we play on it? Well, that's why
we try and wake a gnome up and coerce him to get out of the house at 2:30 in the morning with bacon by setting his front tree on fire.
Yeah.
It's been very, very
and putting a shadow demon into his house through the crack of a window or a shutter, I should say.
So I could go steal all of his shit.
It's to where I've made it to where the colors are each player, minus a few of them because there's surprises and things like that. But I do it so that way, or I've done it so this way the party can have something that they can use to almost focus their how they can build together. And what's a good way to build a good party is by tearing down all their walls and building them back up as a singular cohesive unit by doing something that's going to traumatize the whole party, that's going to make them be closer.
Right.
Which the last episode, that's what happened. The way that the last session and last episodes have gone was I wanted to break down those walls. And boy, did I break down walls. Because at the end of the session, everyone was mad.
Yep.
Like, holy moly. I thought for sure that we were going to probably be like, okay, we're done. This is it. Like, nothing's happening ever again after this. But because there was so many emotions. And I get it, but at the same time, I needed that to happen so I can hopefully see the party become a stronger unit and definitely help like build that role playing and the RP between the players, because I mean most of the time it's either myself and Brian or Sally doing, or even Mark doing most of the talking. In Stan too, even though with the transformation of Rojan, now most of the time it's more growling.
I was just say it's more growling,
being grumpy at everybody.
It's not near as much as he had before.
No,
I don't want to say conceited or withdrawn. Withdrawn is probably a better idea.
I would say he's withdrawn because his character's
still toiling with those emotions.
Yeah.
There's not a day that goes by for that character where he's not thinking of his brother and the repercussions of what just happened and where he's at and just kind of reminding himself for that. So he's kind of in his own little personal hell.
Yeah.
Which is, kind of why he's so angry all the fucking time.
And it sucks because, like, I mean, great RP makes for great sessions, and I mean, we've had some sessions where the RP is on point, and we've had some sessions where it's just like everybody's staring at each other like, okay, well, what are we doing next?
Right.
So then I'm like,
and
okay,
now it's a
here we
beach
go.
episode, kind of thing. But it's, and not everybody comes naturally to RP too, and I 100% understand that.
Oh, yeah.
From the DMing side and having done quite a bit of it, Tyler included as well, you get kind of a knack for it to kind of keep the conversations going, keep them flowing, keep everything going or whatever. It's like, and if you end up, that's the end of the conversation, it's kind of a dead stop, you just move on.
Yeah.
You go on to something else where you can actively engage a different person or different persons in something else where it's like, now we're going to cut back over to here, where it's almost like a cinematic shot where it's like, well, we were over here at the inn, and now cut to the party, we're at the food court of said town or whatever, or we're walking to whatever, and there's a different type of scene that's happening, and not everybody has the knack for that, or to just keep doing that. And I'm not saying I'm the best at it either, but by far I'm not. You take great D&D sessions like Critical Role as one of them, or anything from Dimension 20 or whatever. Those guys are professionals and they do that. And even those have some lull in the conversation. Like, not everybody is built to do that or think like that. And the biggest thing that we try and do as DMs or GMs is to have your player get inside the mind of their character.
Yeah.
Right? How would so-and-so do this, or how would so-and-so react to that, and getting into that and getting them very passionate about the world they're playing in and their character is the goal, right?
Yeah.
To influence those emotions, to say, okay, well, they're very passionate about it, they're very involved in it, they're very committed to it. Now let's go through there and we can make some beautiful, beautiful moments happen.
Yes. And we always, typically before or even after each session that we record, we always go back to the Rojan transformation arc, because like that roleplay scenario was
so good.
So great.
So great. So we keep going back to that because it was such a, like I said, it was
a pivotal moment.
It was a pivotal moment for the party itself, as well as Rodan, obviously.
Yeah.
But we keep going back to that because it was such a crazy moment that everybody was like on the edge of their seats, fully vested into these characters and the scene and everything going on, where you could almost see it in your head, where like he's holding his brother in his arms, he's on the floor, tears streaming down his face as the blood pours over him.
Yeah.
In this room in the inn, and kind of you could see at that moment like the break of that character, not of the character, but the break inside of the character of he just lost his brother.
Almost like when you see that like mental and physical loss of when someone loses their loved pet that has been in that family for years
and years, yeah.
Like when that animal dies,
it felt to me, and I can't speak for the rest of the players, but it felt to me like we had just lost a dear family member.
Yeah.
Where it wasn't just like, we're going to roll a new character. It was this is a significant loss and needs the focus and the attention of the whole party to fully appreciate, everything that goes. I mean, it was like we had the pyre. It was like a full funeral.
It was a funeral.
It was very emotional.
The townsfolk weren't so happy.
They were so happy about it, but
the party, each person in the party, they were like, yes, this needs to happen, because
they were all on the same page. We're all on the same wavelength. Everybody had those built up emotions and was very invested in it, and it is just one of those great scenes that you get that you hope for as a DM, that you hope to give your players time and time again, because they will not forget it.
Yeah.
I've had, in my main campaign, and I've had a few of them, thankfully, but one of them, and my players are going to hate me for saying this, but one of them was I had a catfolk barbarian who went into the market, didn't know what he was doing, right? They had a little side NPC that was a wizard or whatever, and didn't know how to identify magic items, and they went to go get a belt of giant strength because they didn't know any better, and it happened to be a cursed item, and it turned them female for 24 hours. And my players hate, that player especially really hates when I bring this up, and it was a cursed belt of giant strength, basically, and it turned into 24 hours, and they had to go, because that character seemed so macho and so big or whatever, I thought it'd be hilarious, if they failed their save, to give them this, to, they bitched out the little NPC that was there. It's like, why didn't you cast Identify? And nah. It's like, well, I don't know it yet because I'm not that high of a level, basically on a mechanical scale. And it turned him the opposite gender. They roll for it. It was, you stay the same gender, you flip gender, or you become genderless. Oh, wow. And then he ended up rolling that it was flipping gender. And it was, they were in the town where the Mages Guild was very prominent. And that's where they did a lot of the research for magic and so on. And they found out that this belt turned the user to the opposite gender for 24 hours, unless he went all the way with a man. Right? Which just sounds cruel, but it was hilarious. And the party the rest of the party, I should say, he's mortified. He's like, what the fuck just happened, basically? The party takes them to a bar. The other thing that's part of this curse is that he starts to rapidly age in that race to basically like senile age within the 24 hours, at which point it wears off and they're permanently that gender, right?
Yeah.
But the party kicked into overdrive and they're like, we're going to get you fucking laid and it's going to be awesome. And he's like, no, I don't want this at all. I'm not saying my player was homophobic. I'm saying his character was, right? Or at least seemed to be. Yeah. And I thought it would be funny. We've had a lot of that where same player, playing a different character, was on top of an old abandoned church.
Yep.
And he had a tower shield.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I told you this? Yeah.
I think you have.
And so he's like, I'm a big human, and I'm like 6'6", 6'8", whatever, and 285, and just full of muscle, and blah, blah, blah. And how the fuck do I get off of this roof? Well, I'm going to use my tower shield as a sled. And so the party walks out of this, coming down. First of all, he went to try and go down these rickety old stairs, and they broke, and he just sank like a rock into a pond. And then he had gotten up on top of the roof and went to go use his tower shield and went, ah! And just come screaming down this steeple. And it's just, it's moments like that the players will never, ever forget. No. And that's what you strive for as a DM, to try and give them those memorable stories to bring home.
Yeah.
It's been really fun.
Well, it's like our funniest parts so far has been the gnome.
Yeah, the gnome.
Yep. That's another pivotal moment in the campaign so far because, well, the gnome he's there to stay now. They've named him, and well, he's.
It was in a similar vein. Like I said, my player characters for my original campaign, my wife included, can tell you the exact story of why they started to hate that villain, right? Yeah. And anytime I bring this up, even just the word, I get dirty looks from all of my not ex-players, but all of the players that were at that.
Yep.
Excuse me. The NPC's name was Charity.
Yep.
So anytime I bring up Charity anywhere, I get dirty looks from my players.
Even when he's just talking about actual
even when I'm talking about charity run for, whatever, blah, 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 whatever, I get dirty looks. They're like, you motherfucker. Like, I'm sorry that it was so traumatic for everybody, but it was one of those things that they can describe to this day, over 10 years later, where they're like, you motherfucker. They still have passion for it.
Yeah.
And they don't ever forget that.
No.
And it's awesome. And when my wife DM'd for that, we were into playing multiple characters, but one of those was character death, one of mine.
Yeah.
To which she tried to rectify, and that became a hilarious moment where my dwarf druid and his bear Bumo, the dwarf went down to 0 hit points, failed his first death saving throw. Yep. Bumo, as a semi-intelligent bear, got inspiration to try and shove a health potion down his throat. As a bear,
Yeah.
Like trying to do that. So he smashed glass, got cut all over his face. He's trying to get it on there, trying to do CPR, just crushing this dwarf. It's just hilarious. It's those moments. Yeah. Get up! Kind of thing. It's just those moments that you strive for as a DM, and you can't really plan them is the thing.
Oh.
Right?
It almost has to come natural.
It almost has to come naturally. And it's interesting to see those, and you love hearing those stories. Yeah. But it's what you strive for.
Yeah.
It's great.
I mean, we've personally, like, between Brian and myself, like, we've tried to almost set, like, slow softball,
right?
like these
lava
events to
exactly,
people
yeah. But
in the party.
It doesn't always hit,
and it's like it's like they see it coming and they're like, nah.
Exactly.
Like,
so it almost has to come naturally, and it's really cool when you get a table that does that.
Yeah.
But you can't always count on it.
No.
So
that's why we've had the That's why we had the gnome part,
Right.
and that's why we had the pyre and the transformation. Like, even with what just happened in our last few episodes, in the last session, like, I definitely, at the end of the session, there is a lot of tension now between Rojan. Well, not so much between Cornyn and Rojan. It's Rojan and not trusting Cornyn, because Cornyn almost killed Rojan.
Yeah. Like you said, you have to react as a character that would be brainwashed, essentially, like that, where you as a player don't want to do it, but your character has
to do it.
You know, it's not like I can soften the blow or pull punches. It's this is going all out, and that's how it has to happen. And you know, it's interesting for that, and I keep saying that, but it's very interesting to me on some of the journeys that we have to go through.
And it's one of those things where I never meant for it to get to where like everybody is like up in arms against everybody right now. Like, it's just one of those things where I wanted to have a session where I wanted to break down walls, and I was like, how can I do that? Because like Rojan doesn't trust anybody but Cornyn. Now Rojan doesn't trust anybody. Like, and it's one of those things where having that happen, I feel like it's going to do one of two things. It's either going to build a stronger unity in the party, or it's going to bite me in the ass and everybody's going to be like, as their characters, no one's going to trust anybody, and it's just going to be like, nope. Oh, you need health? You're on your own. Kind of
Should have bought some at the last one, or last town. Sucks to be you.
Yeah, like, and it really does suck, like, because at this kind of a pivotal moment after combat, I personally don't know what's going to happen next with the party. All I'm doing is just world building and story creating, so the party can
do whatever the party's going to do. Right?
Have whatever they're going to do. But it definitely comes down to having something that you can build off of.
Right.
And I feel like we were on our way to Waterdeep.
Still on our way to Waterdeep.
And with that trust aspect not there fully in the party, I'm like, how can I get that trust aspect into the party? Like, I'm not just gonna be like, you guys need to trust each other. It
kind of has to come naturally. So as a DM, you have to come up with
a way to do
that, right? And that's part of the challenge. And it can be tough sometimes.
Oh yeah,
you know,
and I feel like it was handled very well at some parts.
Not so well enough.
But there's also some parts where it probably wasn't handled very well. And I know a few of the players, like, they really don't like Targaryen being in there because, like we said,
he's so much higher level than the
everybody
rest of the party,
else. Like,
it's almost like a Deus Ex Machina, type of thing where it's like, oh, the party's in trouble. We're just gonna pull this magic string, and he's gonna appear, and everything's gonna be fine, right?
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the case. And that again, and I reiterated that to everybody that was in the party later on after the session was already done. Like, I had no idea what that was going to do.
Yeah.
It's not like I wanted to go Targaryen summon, I had zero idea. I was like, that's the last one left, and I'm just gonna try it because fuck it, why not? Because I don't know what anything does.
Yep.
So what happens when I pull the black string?
Yeah.
apparently Targaryen appears.
Yeah,
You know?
like and that was the second time that pulling that black string summoned Targaryen. It just this time it was Targaryen knew that if he was pulled back to the party, that well, something bad's probably happening, and he's probably needed, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next session, which it's going to be probably might be a rejoicing session. It might be a tearjerker session. Who knows?
Guess we'll find out next session.
But it's just one of those things where without like giving away too many details, there's going to be something to where hopefully at the beginning of the next session, it's going to hopefully help start that building the trust between the party, because like I said, we don't have that trust yet. I mean, the party's been together for in the world
In game, yeah,
probably 3-4 weeks.
yeah. But I was gonna say about a month. Total in game.
Yeah, and I would say they've done 2 major jobs, and yet they were asked at one point, well, what are they called? And they still haven't come up with a name. So I mean,
Chaos Crew's kind of the placeholder, I guess.
yeah,
at
like
that
right
point, but
right now, yeah, we kind of just gave the party the Chaos Crew thing as a placeholder, especially for like just our episodes and everything, because like until the party can come up with a name, much like what Critical Role does with like Vox Machina and the Mighty Nine and
Right.
Bell's Hells and everything like that, like as soon as the party can get that, then we can actually have our like our name, like have the party's name and everything.
right.
But
Because Chaos Crew, technically, like on Spotify, is also taken already.
yeah,
It's a different role-playing group, and if you're interested, go check them out. But
yeah,
it's not. We're not trying to rip anybody off here. It's more so. It's more so. Just like I said, kind of a placeholder that. What are you doing, dog?
pardon that. That's my my dog being
What are you doing?
weird.
Maybe.
But
Well, yeah, we're not trying to rip anybody off here. We're not trying to
no, and
gain fame, and obviously from the views and stuff, we haven't.
no,
But it's not about the views for us. It's more so like it's a record of what we did, and,
Yeah.
and we can look back on it because there's only one person really in our party that's good at taking notes.
yes,
Even though she normally doesn't want to.
yeah,
But and just kind of being the record keeper of it, where we can go back and listen to it, and I know I have, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, that happened.
yeah.
Right? And
Well,
I've done that, or you find something that you missed originally, and we're like, hey, hang on, that character, what did they say? Like I was
Yeah.
talking to somebody else, or I was going to the bathroom quick, or whatever. You're like, whoa, that changes the whole perspective. That's insane.
Well, and even like the Christmas one shot, like
Yeah.
everybody forgot about their gifts and everything.
Santa's
Even
hot cocoa, or Mrs. Claus's hot cocoa, and
even Xander almost killing himself with
the infinite bag of holding.
the bag of holding that he was given. So that was one of those things where like yeah, like we go back on our just like even I go back and listen because there's things that I'm like okay,
I
like
forgot about like the earrings.
Yeah.
Everybody always forgets about the earrings. Like,
Yeah.
oh, that's right, we got those.
like they were given basically earrings of communication
A message or whatever you want to call them. Yeah.
in the one shot to save Santa Claus, because if they were separated by any means, like to get Santa Claus back, like they need to be able to communicate between each other.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like that's why they have those.
Right.
But yeah,
not to look
everybody completely is like, oh yeah, wait, we do have those things. My dog's going on a zoomy kick right now, so we're getting slightly distracted by him.
Sorry. But it's nice for us or if we have a player that isn't able to make it for some reason, they can then go back and say, well, what happened in the last session?
Yeah.
And it's all recapped right there. You know exactly what happens, and so it's more for our records than anything.
Yeah.
If you guys are enjoying it, I really love that. But again, from our quote unquote views or listens count, nobody really seems to care, which is fine. Like like I said, it's more for us than for you guys at this point. It's just a side thing. We're just setting up a microphone and I'm putting it through recording software and editing in post and just uploading it, right?
Yeah.
And
it's just none of us are here to get rich. Like it's not. It's not a get rich scheme for us.
I'm going to quit my job because of this. No, it's not. It's never that. It never has been that for the podcast.
No.
It was been. We had discussed it originally because like if somebody was gone or whatever, and like nobody took notes or whatever, you have to try and recall from memory, and then now you can actually just listen to it, which is super nice and convenient to do. You know, for that. And, it's not just on Spotify. It's on pretty much everywhere now.
Yeah.
So wherever you get your podcasts. But it's been interesting.
Even with that, like, for smaller, like, groups and anything like that, anybody who wants to start a D&D group, this is a great way to just have that record keeping.
Right.
Because, I mean, it's...
It is part of the normal stuff. If you're not recording it and you have a dedicated note taker or note takers, that's one thing, and you guys meet regularly and you remember that, or whatever. But everybody's got their own schedule, everybody's got their own life and everything else that comes together. So, like, oh, it's so and so's birthday, I've got to go there. Oh, I have a thing I got to do out of town, or whatever.
Yep.
And it's like before I had kids, my wife and I had kids. Yeah, we would play every week.
Yeah.
Every week, and we would play into the wee hours of the night and into the morning on some of our sessions are 12, 14, 16 hours of play, and then we would sleep for like 4 hours and get back up and do it again.
Yeah.
And it was just, now like Tyler's got kids, I got kids, Sally's got her stepson, Stan's got his son,
Mark's got his girls.
I was to say Mark's got his girls.
Dylan's got his
girls, and significant others and everything like that. So everybody's got their own life, and scheduling is hard, which is why I break up the sessions into 3 episodes that are anywhere from normally 45 minutes to an hour and a half, no more than that.
Yeah.
This one's kind of different, obviously, but the whole reason for that is because it gives us 2 to 3 episodes per session, and that way I can release them every 3 weeks. It'd be nice to do it weekly, but we just can't meet that often. Especially during the summer like it is now. We got weddings to go to, and there's fairs and stuff that pop up, or you're going on vacation or whatever. Graduations and everything else, or people are getting ready to go back to school or whatever, right?
And we live in the Midwest, like the upper northern Midwest, like.
It gets fucking cold here during the winter.
We don't have very many nice days, and so we typically like to spend our summers outside doing things.
Yeah, outside doing things, or you have chore work to do to get done.
Yeah.
For houses, a lot of us are homeowners that need to mow the grass, and some of us have gardens, and you want to do something outside where you're having a barbecue and invite people over or whatever. And not necessarily all those people that are at the barbecue are going to be wanting to play D&D, obviously.
No.
So it could be friends or relatives or family reunions or whatever. And so everybody, we try and do that. Like, it would be nice to do it every week, but that's also a lot of pressure to put on you. Because I got burnt out hard. And I know we've talked about this, but I ran my main campaign for, I think it was 1.75 years, pretty close to that. We played every week for 8 to 14 hours ish generally.
Yeah.
sometimes twice a week, right?
Yeah.
Like on the weekends when everybody had off, before we all had kids, and
Yeah.
it was like DM burnout hard. Like
Yeah.
trying to like the way that I designed my campaign, I did it from the ground up. I didn't go, and I'm not saying taking anything away from anybody else who does this, where it's in Waterdeep or it's in Strahdenheim or pre-built or whatever. Those are all completely 100% valid. But what I did is I took it upon myself to make my own world 100%.
Yeah.
You know, my magic system works a little bit different, and this is how the races are laid out, and here's where all the major towns are. So you can point anywhere on the map and say what's here, and I can tell you. And I may not know necessarily who all the people are in there, but the big building blocks of my world are all there, right?
Yeah.
And here's the plot essentially. And whether you like it or not, it's going to catch up with you. Whether you go pick flowers over in that field over there for however long, the big bad evil guy is not going to care what your timeline is, right? He's not going to wait for you. And that was explained to my players from the jump. You're like, you can do this, or you cannot do this, or you can do that, whatever. But know that in the background, the big bad evil guy is making plays to do what he's trying to ultimately do.
Yep.
And it will, at some point, catch up with you, right? Whether you actively pursue it or not.
Yep.
And that's a completely, it's a very hard thing to do, especially that was my very first DMing or GMing experience of doing that, and it took close to 2 years of prep.
Yeah.
So you can go, well, what's here? I can tell you exactly what's right there, and here's all the surrounding towns, and this is what their trade is, and this is what, you know, the population mix is, and blah, 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 and whatever. And yeah, it's nice to do that, but do you need to do that? No. I don't want to come off as that's how you have to do it. It was something that I wanted to do. I had an idea in my head, and I just needed to get it on paper, and I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. And then, you know, what became my players, my friends, kind of were like, well, that would be cool to play it.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, well, okay, you know, and with a world like that, it's very easy to go, well, I've got my own narrative, and this is the story, and blah, blah, blah. But then you put the players in the aspect, and shit changes really fast.
Yes.
Like, you can't railroad them. You can, but you can't. In my eyes, it's frowned upon to railroad them into your narrative.
Yeah.
When it doesn't play into their best interests, right? And so they
And
want to stop the big bad evil guy or do this, that, or whatever. But you know, like I had my players setting up economic welfare stuff where we're going to make this, and this is what we're doing. And then one of my players was researching a steamship.
Yeah.
Right, which was really cool, going in for that or whatever. But
No,
it's everybody's got their own different play style for DMing,
Yes.
and mileage may vary, right?
Well, and even like definitely like first time DMs. Best thing for a first time DM is don't go and do a massive world building and anything like that, because
that's the mistake I made, right?
Because what it's going to do is it's gonna
burn you out.
It's gonna burn you out because you're working a full-time job. You're literally writing your narrative, everything on your own free time. The best thing to do is, that's why they have those pre-constructed modules.
Right.
Like run one of the modules. Like
run a one shot.
Run a one shot.
You know,
like
to give yourself a break of your main campaign. If you are going to do something as insane as like what I did for my first one, which again I don't recommend doing for first time DMs.
No. Because it will burn.
It will burn you out. Like we played, like I said, almost for 2 years straight, every week.
Yeah.
And my players had a lot of fun, but I was so burnt by the end of it. We're like, okay, somebody else needs to take off. We need to do a different campaign. I need some like mental rest, basically.
Yeah.
Where, you know, this player took over. We played 2 or 3 sessions of their campaign that they did or whatever, and then this player took over and we did 2 or 3 sessions or whatever. And it got to the point
where it
where
always seems like they always want to come back to the main campaign.
they always want to come back to the main campaign, and I had no problem with that. But at that point, we were ended up where one of our players had his daughter,
Yep.
And that was becoming a thing. And then he was having he was going through some relationship stuff and whatever. It was hard for him to get to play. Not that he wasn't interested, but there was also, you know, personal shit that was going on, and we understood that. While the other, another one just had his baby, you know, him and his wife or fiance at the time, had that, and so life gets in the way, and then we never got back to it. And then by the time that, their kids were old enough. Like my wife and I were starting to have kids basically for that. We did end up going back into my campaign, and I went back through all the notes and everything that I took and that my players took, and went, okay, this is exactly where we are. I was like, we can go right back there. It's going to be a huge recap basically for where you guys are at, and kind of get a feel for your characters again, because it's like you're picking up a brand new character essentially.
It's like you're picking up from at start.
Right, essentially. I said, so what we can do instead of that, you guys will still be playing in the same world, but I gave them the choice of going, you can either go 100 years before or 100 years after when you first played the main campaign, making new characters, and I will describe the world around you. So the setting is still familiar, but you are playing a different campaign in the same world at a different time, basically. And so if you play before, actions of your characters will ripple and go, for your characters potentially, or you see where your characters left off and what all happened 100 years later, right?
Yeah.
And you see the echoes of what you guys did, and so that was they ended up choosing to go before, and then it ended up happening to, we didn't go that long. We played a lot. But we didn't play near as much as we did before. Then again, life got busy and ended up postponing sessions. I was still ready to go, but there was also a lot of stuff going on, right?
Yeah.
And it just gets down to scheduling conflicts, right?
Yeah.
Where
life happens,
right?
And that's one of the biggest curses to a D&D group.
Right.
It is life itself. Like, everybody's got things that are going on. Like we all have families.
Right.
Like, everyone's got a significant other. If you're single, great. Hey, like, awesome. If you can get a group of friends together that are all single,
right, great.
Good luck.
even better, right?
But
and it takes a lot of dedication to do that. Where you can go week after week, or we're gonna play this set time every month, or every 2 weeks, or every 3 weeks, or whatever it happens to be. But everybody has to be on the same page, because if you start losing characters or gaining characters, and it goes back and forth, it can really, as on the DM side, it can really impact how you're trying to tell the story. And be like, well, I had plans for this character, and now they're not here for 3 sessions.
Yeah.
And then they come back and go, well, I can't do this anymore because the party's now moved on from that.
Yeah.
And you can't have that highlight moment of that character.
Yeah.
And it sucks. It does.
It really does, and it hurts. Not just that player, but it hurts the DM probably more than just the player, because we're the one putting in all the time and effort to try and make it so that way that player has that star shining moment.
Right.
But when you're missing multiple sessions, like, it's really hard to, like, okay, you were going to have your star shining moment 2 sessions ago.
Now,
but
how
you
do
were
I
here.
How do I crowbar this in here now to try and do the same thing or something similar?
So
and you go, well, this is what I had to begin with, and then it ended up going to this character, or they went a completely different direction, and now it's not viable anymore, and you have to come up again with that in there, and then you end up getting players who go, well, I never get, that shining moment, that time in the spotlight, and you go like, well, it's not like I didn't have anything planned, but, and that's what sucks about it, where consistency is key. If you agree you're going to meet once a month or twice every 2 weeks or whatever, and then you have people dropping, and again, we totally get it. Life gets in the way, like, oh, got to go on camping trips, or we're going to go to graduation, or taking a vacation, or just need a fucking mental break. I totally understand that, totally get it. Not saying anything bad about that, but if you want to have those moments, coming back to that, those moments where they'll never forget.
Yeah.
You have to have consistency, and everybody's got to be there.
Yes.
It's a collective storytelling game, is what it is.
Yeah.
And if the collective is not there all the time, it changes, right?
That's why it's called a TTRPG. It's a tabletop role-playing game. You're at a table. You're playing together. You're telling a story together. Like, yes, there might be one person narrating that story, but each person is helping tell that story. And it really hurts when you've got a lot of time and effort put into it. Like, I mean, you can ask, or I mean, you guys can leave comments and ask questions anytime you want. But like, I put in, when it comes to like the week before, I'm putting in almost just on prep 4 to 6 hours a day between painting minis, building maps and terrain pieces, and printing minis and things, and like getting notes and things wrote for that session.
No, see, I never had that problem because I didn't have a 3D printer at the time.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any minis that we really played with, right? We had a very crude map, essentially, that we used. Just so that the players could visualize.
But with the way technology is now.
Yeah, with the way technology is, like, during that time, I didn't have Roll20. Like, when we had a couple of players move away, we ended up going through Skype. That should tell you how long ago that was.
Yeah.
And we ended up using like poker chips or pennies or whatever, or sorry pieces. I remember the sorry pieces.
Yeah.
Or I ended up getting a bag of multicolored golf tees and cutting them off.
Yeah.
They say, you're the blue one, you're the green one, you're the red one, you're the yellow one.
Yep.
And so at least they know where the hell they're at.
Yep.
Right?
And it works.
Just to do that, and it does work. Like, do you need a 3D printer and minis and all that shit? No, you don't. It's a game, even if you have minis of the mind of imagination. Yeah. But do they help? Yeah, they're a hell of a lot of fun. And Tyler's got all that shit. So it's really cool to see that. Like, I can actually pick up Cornyn, or I can pick up Avalon, or I can pick up Rojan, or I can pick up Xander,
or you can pick up the
monster or whatever that we're fighting. And there have been a couple where like, oh shit, I dropped it, and then a piece will break. Well, it just makes more work for Tyler. But it is really cool like that. But for me, and because I knew intrinsically the world so well, my prep was a lot less.
Yes.
I knew vaguely where they're at, vaguely what they would do, and then anything that I didn't know I could come up with right away.
Yep.
Because I knew this is how the governance went, this is how the people interact, this is what the conflicts are, this is what the great known truths of this region are, and so on and so on.
But there's always that prep too.
Yeah, there's a little bit, and you can get into it where you over prep.
Yes.
You know, where you go, I've got 10 pages of notes, and this is what we're going to do, and this is going to be awesome, and I prepped for the last 4 days, and it's going to be great. And then your players go, I don't want any of that, and go a separate direction.
And that's when you just take every single one of those pieces of paper that you just have
throw in the garbage.
Like you throw it over your head, and you're like, well, fuck it, let's go. I guess like I'm
and so some of that
shit up on the point.
Some of that is improv, right? You get into that, and DMs again. You take that.
DMs have to be great on the spot.
On the spot, they have to be.
You have to be.
And some of that is voices and tonality and stuff like that. 4 characters for NPCs that come up for that. There's some that our players like, and some that our players hate. And every DM knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Everybody has that one hated character.
Not necessarily
really
for any other. Not necessarily for any other reason than their voice, right?
Yep.
Larson is a big one for that one. You know, there's also another one that you had that was Roz, basically.
Well,
we nicknamed her Roz.
Yeah, they named her Roz
because it sounds like Roz from Monsters Incorporated.
Yeah. Got that old smoky, raspy voice.
You know, and or you have some that some DMs, and I've seen it before. And I'm not trying to make fun of these DMs. I want full disclaimer on that. I'm not trying to make fun of them. They're doing their best.
Yeah.
But they just butcher an accent. I'm guilty of this too.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and you try your best, but you need something different, right? Because they've heard all the normal 5 voices or whatever you have kind of in stock or whatever. And so you have to get a little bit Irish, or you have to get a little bit, you know, and go around the world essentially.
Yes.
Or start adding mannerisms like a stutter. Or something like that. And again, not making fun of people that have that condition, but you need something different to engage the players.
Yes.
Right? And you start doing combinations that, you know, you do the standard ones where you have an Irish accent, or you have Russian accent, or you have, you know, the classical Western, you know, Japanese, Korean, Chinese, whatever. Or you have the Australian, you know. You gotta get over there and get out, you know, whatever, and blah blah blah. And like I said, all the impressions are probably horrible, but you start leaning on that to get a little bit more, because as your players progress through your world, you need something. Yeah. You know, it can't just be, oh, this is generic NPC number 1 and generic NPC number 100 are all going to be the same. You know, everybody through. You know,
you
it gets very monotone.
You want to have a little
bit of a
range, and you don't have to do crazy voices.
No, you don't.
Like, I mean, you don't have to be the angry old grandpa gnome that's
right.
That's everyone's like, go away. Like no one needs to be like do high pitched noises and things like that even, or like Roz. The Roz voice from Monsters Inc.
Like the character, anything. The villain that my players hate the most. He had kind of a gravelly voice, and he was very, like the party would like be swearing at him or whatever, and he was very slow and methodical and said exactly the right amount of words to not have to just go on and drone, right?
Yep.
To where he said what he was going to say,
and that's it.
And that's it.
There's
right?
Nothing more to it.
Or you get into the John Wayne, or whatever.
Oh yeah.
It's that wasn't my villain, but he was very, like I said, he kind of had a gravelly voice, a very kind of dark undertone or whatever. And he said just exactly what he needed to say and nothing more.
Nothing more.
And it drove him nuts.
Yeah.
Where it's like they would go on this whatever, you're not going to get away with this, and da da da, and he goes, oh, you think, in that voice, or not in that voice, but at the time, in his voice. And that was it. That was all, and it just set the party off, where it was just like, let's fucking go. I'm going to take this motherfucker down, kind of thing.
No, so. Yeah. And those things happen, and that you don't need it. Like, the biggest thing is there's tools out there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, YouTube has many ways to, like, help kind of do, like, vocalization, like coaching and training and things. Like, if you want to be a good DM, and I'm not even saying a good DM, but just a decent DM, you need to have those little niches to be able to like turn and do things and be able to have those voices in your back pocket for NPCs that you got to make up on the spot.
Right. And so you have that generic, like, accent to pull out, essentially, or, like I said, or the manner of speaking, where it's, they hear you,
yeah,
they take a minute, or, just, like, longer than normal to respond,
yeah,
and do that, and they have a certain way of talking, as well as you can mix it up a little bit, where it's, like, English, or common, at that point, is not their first language. You think about native Spanish speakers or native French speakers or native Mandarin speakers or something like that. They're not always going to string their words together perfect, right? And it's one of those things that you can kind of, like you said, keep in your back pocket, where you can have kind of a combination of stuff if you're in that part of whatever world that you're building, where a good example of that, I guess, would be like a Norwegian accent or whatever. Their first language is Nordic, right? Or some type of Slavian language like that, where when they came to America for that, my grandma always used to say this, so, make the lights off.
Yep.
Go throw the cows over the fence some hay, yeah. Where they get the point across, but it's not necessarily structured.
You're like looking at them like, whoa,
you want you want to go take the cows and throw them over the fence instead of throwing hay over the fence. Yeah, exactly. And so you have that where, it's kind of a mixed up dialogue, and they have a little bit of an accent, or a thicker accent or whatever. Or if you are bilingual or trilingual or whatever, you can start throwing random words in there, right?
Well, it's even like a great thing to do is everybody who DMs, or even players that want to do accents for their character and everything like that, they always go to that either Boston or New Yorker accent, because it's easy for everyone to do, and
you hear it stereotyped in a ton of movies, where it's from Boston, well, no, I'm from Queens, we don't take kindly to your kind up here, stuff like that, where you can slip in and do that, or
hey yo, I'm walking here.
Exactly. Right. Everybody's kind of the generic Boston accent.
Yeah.
Where you don't have to be good at it, but at least it's in your back pocket to give it a little bit of variety, right?
Yeah. And the mannerisms and the voice tone is definitely a big thing too. Like when you're trying to get that like edgy feel, like just kind of lowering the tone just a little bit, just to
or,
get that.
or a little gravel in the voice or something like that. Now, obviously, like Critical Role is a special exception for that because they're all voice actors.
Yeah,
and they can do wondrous things.
I mean, even Dimension 20.
Yeah, Dimension 20 is also another really good one where they've had so much experience on there.
Yeah,
where they really get into that. Where,
and shout out to them, like
they're thank you so much.
Yes, we've gotten numerous ideas from them, like on character building, things like that. Like it's great to be able to use bigger platforms as a resource,
right?
And even the players and like the DMs, like Matt Mercer, Brandon Lee Mulligan. I can't think of her name right now.
I'm blanking too, but I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm so sorry. Oh, what the heck is your name? I can see your face. I'm really good at faces.
Yeah, but no, like they'll even be the first ones to say, like, if we can help, like, reach out, like, and that's kind of the other thing, like, one of the things that we talked about before we started recording this today was, like, being a resource to help new DMs. If you guys
to get ideas or for scenery or world building or characters or villains or whatever, it's nice to be a recorded. I say that very loosely. Podcast for that. Like I said, even if we don't get any views, but it's always there, right? Unless we happen to take it down, which I don't see anytime soon. But you can always go back and re-listen, and say 20 years from now, somebody finds this and they're looking into that and go, well, how did they do it? In 5e, right? And they're on,
18 12.7.
Right, exactly. it just depends, right? And then they can go through there and go, this is how we want to do it. We're going to go back to 5e, or we're going to go. I need ideas for world building, and that's especially today. Like, you have all the streaming platforms. You have stuff like Dune, or Game of Thrones, or whatever that's already kind of popular and access and stuff like that. Or you take shows like Breaking Bad and go, I want that concept in my game. Like you had talked about Targaryen having an addiction, right?
Yep.
Well, taking like a storyline from Breaking Bad and kind of tying a character to that is a very powerful tool.
And no lie, part of his, like, the storyline that we kind of thought up for him was from Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
Like, it's basically like when Jesse kind of, like, starts taking his own drugs. Like, it kind of was that whole
spoilers.
Thing. Yeah, spoilers for anybody who hasn't watched Breaking Bad.
Or depending on your tone of your campaign and stuff like that, like The Walking Dead is another really big one, and all of these various fandom. Doctor Who's another big one. Yeah. Like Tyler and I have talked about, Cornyn, for the time magic stuff of it. What would that affect? And it's like, well, you look at the classic time travel movies and stuff like that. Hot Tub Time Machine, or Back to the Future 1 through 3, or whatever, or Doctor Who. Doctor Who comes up a lot because it's all timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly stuff. And it's not like it doesn't have consequences. It might be, in Doctor Who, it might be a dozen episodes or a different season completely, and then to go, remember when he did this, or she did this, I should say, for all the Doctor Who's, way back when in season whatever, that comes back to bite him or her, right? And it follows in with that there are repercussions even if they're not looking at them in that episode, right? And it's interesting to see that where you have that dynamic, right? Because any action is going to have consequences.
Every action has a reaction.
Exactly.
Like, and that's another great thing too with DMing, is you always want to have a consequence for your players. If they do something that's offhanded, off the wall, that they think is not going to have a repercussion, well, they're going to be in for a rude awakening because there is a repercussion coming.
So instead of we're going to go into the city, you know, the fighter jokingly says, "Well, I'm going to punch this guard."
Yeah.
And now they have to either bail out the fighter or have a prison break, and they can't do what they wanted to in that town or whatever. It takes it into a completely different way, you know. And each player plays different as well, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I've had characters that are sexual deviants and played as a sexual deviant and tried to coerce a town's guard into, like, basically just doing anything that he wanted, so that way we could basically get away with some crimes, and ended up getting locked up.
Right.
I mean, things like that happen, and I mean, for the players out there, like, you're gonna do some off the wall, crazy shenanigan things, but here's the deal: all of your actions are gonna have a consequence.
Exactly.
So,
and it's as much as it sucks or whatever. Some of that is self-inflicted by the players, right?
Yes.
Not all of it.
No.
But some of it, or they'll be like, "Fuck, I didn't even think about that," and then it lets them think differently of them. Next time, oh, maybe I shouldn't punch that guard or whatever because I'm just joking around or whatever, blah blah blah. Or, it's like, no, you did that, and it's gonna have a consequence, right?
Yep. I mean, I go back to, like, thinking sometimes too. I had, I was DMing for another group of people, and a long time ago, and what happened was the party was in a town, like I shouldn't say a town, a city, and the one of the players who was a dwarf walked up and started to cut down a tree in the city, like in the middle of the city. Come to find out, it was the tree that the city, like, almost like worships. Yeah. And they got kicked out. As they were getting kicked out of the city, like, basically guard escorted out of the city, the dwarf just openly looks at the guards and goes, "Well, can I at least have lumber?" and they got thrown out of the city and were told to never return, and if they did, that they would be executed.
Right.
And the bad part was the city was the only place that they could go to at the time to get resources and jobs.
Right.
So they basically got banished from a city. And this was like the second session. So it was like
pretty early on.
So it was really early on.
Well, and that reminds me, like, of my very first campaign. Not mine that I was DMing, but the very first one I played in.
Yeah.
We had a very, very talented GM who's been there forever. We were playing Pathfinder, a system that was new to me. We had a lot of really memorable moments, but one of them was we had myself and my friend who's playing the captain. I said that in air quotes, but that was what my character referred to him as. And then we had his friend. I was playing an alchemist, and we were in a big city, like a major city, a port city, and he went into the trading district, found the black market trading, got into some trouble in the black market, which is underground in the sewers.
Yeah.
Right. And he goes, "Oh shit," and casts fireball.
Oh.
Right. And the consequence to that was that he blew up an entire district.
Yeah.
I'm like, "No!" And he's like, What's going on?" And then the DM described what was. He goes, "It's a glorious explosion." He goes, "Where you guys are out 2 districts back, you just see this like mushroom cloud run into the sky because of all the methane that's in the sewer system. That
it was a glorious explosion
that was blocked off, right? Because that was the district or the black market of that district, right?
Yeah.
And so he blew up an entire friggin' district,
wow,
leveled the whole thing, and it's just like, oh my! He didn't even think about it. He's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna cast fireball. I'm gonna run away." It's like, you're surrounded by methane gas, and I wanted to tell him,
consequence.
And you could just see it in his face. He's like, "Oh no, oh no." So, long story short, we ended up having to resurrect him. and we had to pay for all the damages, which was not great. But he learned a valuable lesson that they do indeed have consequences.
Oh, yeah.
Whether
that's a big consequence.
Whether you know it or not, right?
Oh, wow.
Or whether you think about it or not.
Yeah.
He didn't think that, I'm in a sewer, it's full of methane, because the DM described a couple of times that, there's a very strong pungent smell of, it's sewer. So it's very musty like methane gas. He mentioned that a couple of times. It must not have clicked. And, he didn't mean to do it. He didn't mean for it to go that way, but it went so sideways.
Just a quick little spark.
Yeah, boom! Even the vendors were like, no! And then they were vaporized, and that was it. And it was like, oh my good Lord. Holy cow.
I will burn this place to the ground! Literally.
But that's what he had in his repertoire, was a fireball stock or whatever, and just like, holy cow.
Yeah, I mean,
like, we love him for it. He did not know the consequences, but he ended up having to roll a new character temporarily while we had to try and work everything out to pay for shit.
And to find
or get out of it, right? And then he was able to bring that character back, and then he ended up not playing that character anymore. He's just like, no, I'm okay.
I'm done with that.
I'm done. So, no, it's every action has a consequence, and you think, that's the best thing I can tell you is think, and what would the actual appropriate consequence be? Because I have had other DMs, or have seen other DMs that have been like that, and the consequence is super harsh.
Yes.
And you gotta play with it. Right? We're all here to have fun.
Yeah, and you gotta definitely know. Okay, yeah, let's kind of not.
We don't need to go to 0 to 100 real quick.
we
can feather this a little bit.
But if it's the same player over and over and over again,
I would suggest at that point making sure you take that player,
aside.
Don't do it
have
right in
a
front
conversation.
Of, right. Don't do it in front of the whole party.
Yeah.
Right. Because then you're singled out, and it's an embarrassing thing, and you just don't want to do that. So you be respectful. Take them aside, after the session or whatever, and go to a different room or have a different private conversation later. With that person and do that and try and resolve that issue.
Yeah.
But,
and there are some players that get very combative and well, no, I'm in the right to do what I want to do, blah, blah, blah.
Establish your
never
ground
going
rules.
to.
Yeah, establish your ground rules from session 0.
Yep.
And be like, this is what I expect of the players, and, they tell you what they expect as the DM.
Yeah.
And, this is my DMing style. This is how I'm going to play. If you guys are going to have any issues, let's bring them up, or we can talk about them.
Yeah.
But always be respectful for them.
No, yeah.
And like I said, try not to single anybody out, because then it's just embarrassing for them. It's embarrassing in front of the whole table, and it just makes them not want to play.
No.
Right?
And definitely, one of the last things we'll leave you here with is always have a session 0, because session 0s are perfect for having those discussions, knowing when to be able to build those rules of how you want this to be, how the player wants to play, how the DM is going to react. It allows you to kind of
and ask questions. Questions for that. It's like, well, if I did this or I did that or whatever, what would you think of that?
Yeah.
And Tyler and I get along very well for that, because it'd be like, well, if I did this, what do you what would be your ruling on it, right?
Yeah.
What if I took this feat and this? How does that work? Because everything's flexible, and it's always the ultimate decision of the DM to make that call in their world for. By the book it says this.
Yes.
Well, in my world it does not, right? Or whatever. And have those discussions if you can, and be respectful for each other, for that, and have fun, right?
Yeah. Definitely the respect between the players and the DM, and just like Brian said, the biggest thing comes down to having fun.
Right. We're all here to have fun. We're not all here to just be mopey or pissed off or whatever, if you want to do that, go talk politics or something.
Yeah,
like that,
go-
this is not the place for it, right?
Go to the town square and start spouting nonsense, because like the biggest thing with D&D is it's an escape from reality for us to be able to just have fun in a whole new world.
Right.
Like,
in a world that we're creating together.
yeah.
You know,
And
kind of shaping and going through this story that we're collectively telling together rather than fun.
And D&D is a great thing for building stronger bonds in your friendships between everybody. It's great for those things because, well, you're pulling that group together.
Right. And I have had sessions where my players have been pissed off at me.
Oh yeah.
You know, and it'll be the next session or session after, like when I was doing them weekly. It might be 2 sessions after, and then we're finally okay again. But we've built up because of that.
Yes.
Right. They may resent you for it, or they may not want to talk to you or whatever. But you know, you build those bonds, right? Going through there.
And always open communication.
Yes.
Don't ever feel like, as a DM, you can't talk to your players. Don't ever, as a player, feel like you can't talk to the DM,
right?
Like, or to the other players.
And what are your boundaries? Like, there's certain subjects that people are sensitive about.
Yeah.
You know, that are very heavy subjects where it might be fresh or it might be a very traumatic experience or whatever. You need to let the DM know so they don't explore a storyline that's got that in there, because then you don't want to have them relive that traumatic experience, right? So it's boundaries, right?
Yeah.
Boundaries, consent, having fun.
Yeah. So, yeah. We hope you guys really enjoy this. This is something that we're gonna do kind of new here. Hopefully the next one we can pull in one of the other players, and
It wouldn't just be Tyler and myself.
yeah.
Figured we'd do this one first, you know, because we're, I would say, fairly seasoned DMs.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be somebody with more experience, right?
Yes.
That's the other thing too. Learn from the grades.
Yes.
Right?
And
you can only do your best, and if you don't succeed at the first time, like, keep working on it.
yeah,
Right?
and we also thought like this is a great time for us to kind of do this because it was supposed to be a scheduled session today,
Right.
but
It didn't end up working.
it didn't end up working that way because other commitments. People have lives, so like it was just one of those things where we're like, hey, what can we do? So we said let's kind of do like a session recap, kind of go over
like DM advice type of thing. Yeah.
and go over things, world building, like how
character
I was
building.
building this world
Right.
that we're experiencing right now. Like it's
how to build your villain. You know, it doesn't have to be
yeah.
you know, a Batman villain necessarily or something like that. It could be something of your own flavor. But they, again, you know, they're always looking at themselves as the hero of their own story.
Yeah.
Right. Except for the Joker, he's fucking nuts. But anyway, there's all different flavors of villains, and you need to have, you know, a fairly memorable one that comes up for that. And I've been lucky enough to have that experience.
Yeah.
I think, and once you get that, you have a united enemy that the players go after.
Yes.
And it just helps build that strength and friendship moving forward. So.
And so this is just one of those things where we want to do this because, well, I mean, I've been DMing for quite a while. Brian's been DMing for quite a while. We've both been players. Like we've played multiple different classes. Like we've ran through gambits of different scenarios. So we want to be able to kind of give out some of that advice and knowledge and things that work, things that don't work.
Right. And for me, like I've been, this is kind of my first entry into 5e.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm coming from Pathfinder. It's a completely, well, I wouldn't say completely different system. It's basically D&D 3.5.
Yes.
With more fluff essentially, but having 5e has been different but good.
Yeah.
You know. There's different systems out there. Find one you like.
Yeah.
Right.
There's 5e. There's Pathfinder 2e. I mean, there's still a lot of people play 3.5.
I was gonna say a lot of people play D&D 3.5 or Pathfinder 1E.
Yeah.
There's also
the new one coming out from Critical Role,
yep.
Daggerheart. There's so many things. If you want to play Space Marines, yeah, we got Warhammer.
Right.
You can play. If you want to be a fantasy based, you can do that. If you want to be just an actual like world building based, like you're in The Sims, you can do that.
They've also got like on the other spectrum, they've got like the horrors type stuff.
Yeah.
Where, they've got like Call of Cthulhu,
Yep.
and there's a couple of noir ones where you're more of a detective and it's different gameplay and a D20 means something completely different in that game than it does in say like D&D or Pathfinder, and it's pick what you want to play. And
pick your
poison. Find a system that you really like and surround yourself with people who really like to play that.
Yeah,
and have a good time.
Go with it, but definitely research the system that you want to play.
Right.
Like
I know I can break Pathfinder characters pretty easy.
Yeah.
But that's from doing so many characters in my world for doing that. Some of the big main figurehead characters, so to speak, and recurring NPCs have their own character sheet in my world.
Yeah.
Now, do you have to do that? No, but I did it in mine just in case my players get a wild hair up their ass and want to fight said person.
Yeah.
I have a stat block for them, basically, or in my case, I have a full character sheet.
Yeah.
But do you have to do that? No. But find your system,
find your niche,
find your niche, and research it. Make sure you understand it. There's lots of forums and Reddit posts and forum posts and stuff like that dedicated to that kind of stuff. What happens if X and Y, blah blah blah? I'm sure somebody's already asked.
Oh yeah, we have one of the best communities out there, like the D&D, Pathfinder, like that community in itself, great.
Mm-hmm.
Like
on the whole,
there are some stinkers out there, but hey, guess what? We have a great community, and everybody's out there to help everybody.
Right.
Like trust me.
On the whole, they're really helpful.
Yeah.
And that's why you have so many people getting so passionate about homebrews.
Yeah.
That's a completely different subject. We haven't even touched on this. This episode.
That'll probably be the next session. We'll probably hit on homebrews because
they can be tons of fun, or they can be a nightmare because they've never been tested.
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple things we're going to be hitting on with what we're going to be doing with this. So, and we'll bring in people that kind of have a little bit of a niche in that, like have a little bit of a better understanding and everything.
Right.
So we're excited to add something new to our podcast channel, and like I said, we're not looking at anything. We just want to tell our story.
Right.
And we love you guys, and we hope for bigger and better things to come in the future.
Yeah. So if you guys do have any questions, feel free to post them down in Spotify.
Yeah.
Or we have all of our socials listed on Spotify. Even if you don't listen on Spotify, to where you can go ask on our Facebook page. You can ask on Instagram or whatever, and we'll get back to you.
Yeah.
If you have a specific question for Tyler, for myself, or Stan, or
Mark
or Sally, whatever. Just get a hold of us somehow. We'll get back to you.
Yep.
So, yeah, much love.